Hello, welcome back. I'm Simon Head. I'm the director and creator of the movie Subversives, The History of Lowest of the Low. Thank you for joining us week after week. Now, this one's a little bit different, but I'll get to it in a sec. So, I want to let you know that you can stream this movie on Apple TV. Go to Apple TV. It's available in Canada, the United States, UK, Australia. And if you don't have any of those, you don't live in those countries, then get a VPN. Stream it off the Canadian one, though, because then it'll put it in the charts again. If you don't have Apple TV, then you can just go over to YouTube. You can rent it on YouTube. All the links and things will be in the description of this episode. If you don't have a computer, then you're screwed. No. If you don't have a computer, then you just go to a Lowest of the Low show and pick up the movie there. The movie's there is available. It's cheaper. There's no shipping fees. There's no import fees. There's no blah, 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 blah. It's super simple, easy. And while you're there, go buy some other stuff. Go buy their music. They have vinyl there. They have CDs, T-shirts, all that stuff. Go talk to Sue. She'll set you up. Sue's actually very, very briefly in this movie. And Sue, I just might play your episode next if you're lucky. If you can't come to a show, then the last resort is to go to Amazon and buy it there. It ships out of Canada. The movie is there. You can buy it. Just search Subversives. Pops right up. Bing, bang, boom, bop, dip, psh, psh, and it's at your front door. Those are all sound effects. Before I go and before we get to go to this, I want to thank the community. The Lowest of the Low community is a very strong and fruitful community. I really appreciate everybody allowing me into their community. It's a joy working with this band, Lowest of the Low. It's a joy doing all these things. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Please help this system out. I don't know how the algorithm works, but do all the things you're supposed to do. I promise you, I will not spam you with stupid episodes. Every episode will be meaningful and enjoyable. This interview I didn't do. This interview was done 23 years ago by an interviewer named Scott. How did I get this footage? I got an email from a guy named Scott who says, I have all these interviews that I did. Would you like them? And of course, I'm like, yeah, give it all. So I have pretty much hours of stuff. And I remember waiting out in front of his house while he digitized it from these tapes and put it on, gave me and here passed me through the window, this hard drive of awesomeness. And there's a lot of stuff in there, and I'm going to start bringing out the older stuff because there's some really, really great stuff. And it shows everybody 25, 24, 23 years ago. It's pretty awesome. So without further ado, here's the interview with Ron Hawkins, and enjoy.
All right, round two, I guess. And I was just speaking to you about writing, and I think you probably answered the question just about. I was curious to know, has your writing had to change to sort of fit in the framework that is Lowest of the Low? And I guess you pretty much answered that, right?
Well, I mean, I guess the only addendum to that is that partially there's a sense of what the Lowest of the Low does, and I'm sure that some kind of subconscious processes happens that I write toward that. But at the same time, what the Lowest of the Low was doing is really expanding. So it's kind of this, just finding our feet. It's me sort of. I don't want to assume too much. Like I don't want to assume what the Lowest of the Low can do.
Right.
And I may even have done that in the past because I know toward the end of '94 I was bitching a lot about feeling constrained as a songwriter by two guitars, bass, drums. But in some ways, and I don't think I'm being disingenuous about this, but in some ways I feel like I'm relearning the parameters for that, like that they're getting more broad. Because even the new stuff we just did in Chemical, the band has a lot more soul, and there's a lot more groove going on than there used to be, and just people are becoming more mature players.
Cool.
So,
and like take this as you will, but I like your contribution, like your new song to the live record, Lives and Times, and some of the new stuff that I heard you playing the other day seems. It seems a little perhaps more subdued, a little more introspective. Has there been a shift sort of in your writing? Like is it coincidence just that it seems a lot of the stuff that I've heard from you is more relaxed as far as tempo is concerned?
Yeah, some of it. I mean, and then there are some songs like we've got a new song called Sincero, which is kind of, sort of balls out guitar, full-on guitar stuff. And it's funny because, again, like I think the parameters have changed on both ends. Like I think when the band rocks now, we rock harder than we used to. Like the songs that are rock songs and sort of punk rock songs are a lot more tear your head off than they used to be.
Right.
And then the songs that, like you said, like the songs that are slower tempos are maybe a lot more introspective and a lot more, they're just a lot more majestic or something. I don't know, like
Right.
there's a lot more nuance to them.
Cool.
And they're not as based on, I mean, where we came from before with Shakespeare and even into Hallucigenia was we had done an awful lot of busking and a lot of folk clubs and a lot of, for a long time, Steve and Dave and I played as a three-piece, like acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to do really small places like the Blue Moon Saloon on Bloor Street, which was just kind of like a university hangout drunk tank. Basically, people would come and get hammered, and we played with a really small PA system, and people danced on tables and that kind of thing. So we were coming from a sort of a folk base there with this kind of punk energy and a folk rock base. And now I think just it's been so much water under the bridge, and we've tried so many different things that we're just the scope is getting wider.
Right. Do you think rock and roll is a young man's game now that, I mean, you're older and wiser perhaps, and like Steve has children, and like, are you able to give it what it needs like you perhaps used to, or is that just bullshit?
Yeah,
rock and
no,
roll
I
is a
mean,
young man's game.
I don't know. I mean, as far as the physical end of it, I mean, I feel kind of ludicrous talking about this in my 30s, but we put on a good 2.5 hour show or whatever sometimes, so we still got the physical wherewithal to do it. As far as the the lifestyle or whatever the rock and roll thing is, I mean, there's Leonard Cohen and there's Tom Waits and there's Art Bergman and there's, I mean, to me it's there are people who are boring when they're 17 and they're boring when they're 70, and there are people who are exciting when they're 17 and they're exciting when they're 70. So I think the whole rock and roll ethos about being more radical when you're younger is just false.
Right.
Or maybe it's not false. I mean, maybe statistically it's true.
Right.
But I don't think that's important to me. Like I think the people who are hungry to learn and to grow as artists do it for the rest of their life.
Right.
So
Now that you've, I guess, it's been probably 2 years. I guess this whole reunion thing has sort of been together for almost 2 years now, or more than 2 years. So I mean, it's pretty lived in. Like, how does it differ? Do you feel that you have the freedom that maybe you had with the Rusty Nails, as far as an audience is concerned? Like, I mean, obviously people have expectations. If they're in university and they were fans of the band and stuff, they do you. I sort of asked you this earlier, but like how does it compare to what you were doing when you were on your own with the Rusty Nails, and now?
I don't think it's much different in a way. Like in some ways it is different. Like in that when when people, I mean, I didn't have any Ron Hawkins fans. I had Lowest of the Low fans in 1995. When I sort of stepped away from the Lowest of the Low and started playing solo shows and stuff like that. To that point, obviously the Lowest of the Low fans were also fans of my writing, but like there was no Ron Hawkins fans at that point, and we had to sort of build that. So the Rusty Nails sort of had a clean slate to some degree, except that a lot of people who came to see the Rusty Nails were yelling out for Lowest of the Low songs, for a year and a half until they realized we just weren't going to play them,
Yeah.
And then they stopped, or they went away and weren't Rusty Nails fans, I don't know. But and we built a crowd of our own, and I think when the Lowest of the Low come back, at first it's a moot point because those are the songs we're going to play anyway.
Yeah.
But I think next year, when a new record comes out and we make this commitment to say, look, this is not a reunion act, this is like, we're an ongoing thing, and here's the new record, and that's going to make up most of the set. And I think we'll probably run into the same thing the Rusty Nails ran into, which is that people will be yelling for Lowest of the Low songs at Lowest of the Low shows,
Yeah.
And I think we have the respect for the audience and also the balls to just say, look, screw it, like, we're going to play some songs from there, but we're going to move forward. And if you're not willing to move forward with us, then, there's a million other bands. You can go see a Lowest of the Low cover band, if you want. Like,
So that brings us to me asking you about, like, this very past weekend, you, I guess, demoed 4 songs. So, which, by saying demo, I guess, and you guys are referring to it as a demo,
Yeah.
it means it's more to shop around, or to, it's not going to be for release to the general public, right? Like, you guys, but you do have plans on making a record? Is that sort of hinged on, like, getting a deal, perhaps, or?
No, not at all. I mean, like, it's sort of a 2-phase thing for us. Like, when we demo with Ian and we demo at Chemical, the quality of what we did is so good, and they're so good at what they do that these are songs that could wind up on an album. It's, you know, they're only demos by dint of the fact that we are going to use them, these four, as a sort of an advanced tool to go out and shop a possible deal. And
Right.
you know, and we're going to look outside Canada as well, because Canada has certain limits, and certain limits for us, I think, because I think there's certain things expected of us, and some of those things are positive and some of those things are very negative, like because we did burn a lot of bridges, you know, in the early 90s.
Really?
And yeah, and we're not upset about that. That's just who we are, and we were very vocal about what we wanted. So I think we also want to go to the States and to Europe and to Australia and places where there isn't any baggage, you know, or there isn't a past with the new stuff. And if there's a deal, like we're going to shop at places like Interscope and Epitaph, and on those levels, and probably things like Sony and Warner or whatever, Island, I don't know if whatever that is nowadays. And
Tons of labels out there, so
yeah, we're just going to shop it. And we've always had this motto that, you know, we don't want to be in a ghetto, so we don't have any sort of, we have principles, but the principles are to the songs and to the deal, but we're not sort of abstractly against large record companies if we get what we need out of them,
right.
you know. So we're going to do that, and that'll be the first phase. And if that turns up completely nil and nobody wants it, then we will make the record on our own, you know. Or if we don't see anything out there that makes any sense, or makes any more sense than us making the record on our own, then we'll put it on our own label and go from there, you know. But there is a new record that's, I would say, about 2/3 written and ready to go, you know.
Cool. You talked about burning bridges. Like, what sort of bridges were there to burn for you? I mean, you guys had, just, I guess, reading about it and sort of witnessing it on the periphery, it seemed that you guys sort of had it all. Like, this independent band that sold thousands of copies of, had a great live show, a great sort of touring career, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
was that just because of burning bridges, in the sense that, I mean, you guys didn't get along, there was tension, or?
No, I mean, like, just externally, like, I mean, we've always been about, and I think this is different from a lot of bands, but we've always been about rolling the dice, like going for it, you know, and going for it on our terms. And so, I mean, things came up wherein we've always had confidence that if we don't have the goods to deliver, then it's a moot point anyway. And if we do have the goods to deliver, then we're going to demand something in return. We're going to demand that we do it on our own terms, and we can defend the things that we believe in.
Right.
And so, I mean, to that end, we had a showcase gig for a whole bunch of major record labels way back in 91 or 92. And we saw these SST t-shirts when we were on tour, one like, "Don't suck corporate cock," and, you know, "Corporate rock still sucks," and blah, blah, blah. And we wore these t-shirts. We thought it would be funny to wear these t-shirts at our big industry schmooze, right?
Right.
And
No one thought it was funny.
well, no, some people thought it was funny, and that was our point. Like, our manager at the time was like, "This is, you know, you're insane. This is like you're shooting yourself in the foot." And our whole point then was like, some people will find this very funny. Even some people in major labels will find this funny. Those are the people we want to talk to. And if they don't find it funny at all and they're offended and they walk out, then we were going to run into all kinds of problems down the line with them anyway.
Right.
And so I think just knowing what we want and being willing to do that kind of stuff, I think sort of made a lot of people. I mean, it's cocky, you know,
Yeah.
and I think
No,
that's
I
not
respect
expected
it.
in Canada. You're not supposed to be cocky at all in
Yeah.
Canada, you know.
Supposed to, yeah. Well, fair enough. Do you have any sort of regrets? Do you, like, now that it's now that it's a band again, sort of officially, and you sort of mentioned, like, if you had stayed together, you perhaps could have been 2 or 3 more records into your career. Like, do you have regrets that it stopped, or?
No,
did
not
it
really,
need to
because
stop, or?
I can't speak for the other guys, but I mean, for me, I mean, I feel like I'm 8 records into my career anyway, and I mean, I totally love and respect the work I did with the Rusty Nails, and I loved being in that band, and the solo record I did, and just doing acoustic stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things happened because the Lowest of the Low broke up, and in other guys' lives in the band as well. Like, they did a lot of stuff that they wouldn't have done if the band had continued.
Right.
So. And I know, like, Steve wrote solo stuff for his own band, and, you know, sort of stepped up as a writer. I think he wrote a lot more after the Lowest of the Low broke up than he was when we were in the Lowest of the Low. So I just think all around, like, regret doesn't make any sense, you know, at that point, because it's done, and, you know, and I think even, like, not to get too, airy fairy about it, but like we broke up for a reason, and the way we were doing things and the patterns that we had then together weren't wholly healthy, and now that we're doing it again, they are, and we've had a chance to see the good things and see where we were fucking up and fix the stuff that was not right,
Respect the beast, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as I was saying before, I'm sort of like, I've got a very large ego, and I think it's easy for a person, especially if they're writing a lot of songs in the band, it's easy for a person to think, I could do this on my own. And, there were certainly moments of us having fights and again, just sort of like drunken tour fights, and somebody quit every single tour. And, you get cocky and you think, well, I'm too much of the part of this, I could do this on my own, and you go off and do it on your own for a while. And there's lots of great things about that. But when you get a chance to come back and do it again, it's humbling, and you start to go, wow, yeah, I am a good songwriter, and I can do lots of things on my own, but we do some really great stuff when we do it together, and I don't think a lot of people get to do that a second time and be in it and understand it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what's with Australia? Because I've been hearing all these stories about how Australia just adores and loves Lowest of the Low. Have you ever played there, or like?
No, it's like really funny because we did some shows in Toronto with the Weddings Parties Anything,
right,
band from Australia who have a pretty huge following in Australia, and they covered Rosie and Grey. They were covering it when we played with them, and then they also put it on a live record and put it on an album called Donkey Serenade, I think. And that was back in 94, 95. And we lost contact with them, and the band broke up and everything. And just all kinds of weird things started happening. Like I was in Italy, and I stayed at this place that was a lot of Canadians and Americans and Australians. And these Australian kids were there. A friend of mine was working there and was listening to Lowest of the Low and listening to Rosie and Grey. And some woman who was traveling from Australia said, how did you get this? What's going on? And my friend said, oh, this is my friend's band. My friend wrote this song. And she's like, no, we didn't. And, like Weddings Parties Anything wrote this song. And so there was things like that. And then another friend of mine was at a campfire sing-along in Australia on some vacation, way in the outback or whatever, sitting around a campfire. And somebody started singing Rosie and Grey, and everybody at the campfire knew it, and told my friend that it was an Australian folk song.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
And they were like, no. So, yeah, like lots of really weird stuff just because a band there who we like and who liked us decided to cover our stuff, and it sort of took off there. And I think it was on the radio there or something. But so now, we were actually in contact with Mick from Weddings Parties, and he was saying if you're going to come to Australia, you should get your first two albums, get them out over here because, there are people here who know you already. And that's happened a lot for us in the States too, like a lot of sort of brain drain from Canadian universities and Buffalo, like spreading out in the States. And we always get emails from people in Boulder saying, like there's 100 people here who want to see your band, and I can promise you that the show will be well attended. And
so is that going to be a focus then? At what point do you think you'll be able to put out a record of new material? Like, are we talking? We're at the end of 2002, so
yeah. Well, I would have to say for sure by the end of 2003, or else we'll all hang each other, And so for sure by the end of 2003. But as I said, we're kind of 2/3 of the way through the process, and the writing is going well, and we're feeling fairly prolific. So yeah, there's the process of shopping and everything. So it's kind of up in the air, but it could be as early as the summer, and it could be the fall. I'm thinking probably the fall.
But then do you think you'll focus on playing outside of Canada? Like Canada's, Canada will always be there, and you'll have a fan base. But is the time now to like go and play Europe and Australia and United States?
But I think that I think the time is definitely here to go and expand and to go places like that for sure, because we all want to, and there are people there that want to see us, and they're just new territories for us. But we still want to tour Canada, and we have a lot of, as you said, we have a lot of really loyal fans who've been following us for a long time, and we'd want to go and play for them as well.
Right. I'm going to sort of ask a cheesy, broad question, but with like the new with the idea of a new record sort of there, like what sort of expectations do you have? Like you've loosely talked about shopping. It could happen, it could not happen. But
right.
What's the sort of best case scenario that would happen for Lowest of the Low for you?
Well, not to be, not to sound disingenuous about the the sort of commercial aspects of it, but like I think for the Lowest of the Low, at least for me in the Lowest of the Low, the best case scenario is always going to be that we make a record on our own terms, a place like Chemical with Ian, like inside a community, like a family that we feel we're part of, and do something that we're true to. And then from that point on, just do our best to be able to survive so that we can continue to do it. And whatever level that can get to is fabulous, as long as it happens in a real way. And as long as it's not a matter of selling ourselves to something that we don't believe in so that we can take that next step or whatever that is.
Right.
I think that's one of the great benefits of being, in your 30s as opposed to being in your early 20s and doing, is that you're by now kind of like, I don't really care. I don't really care about doing a 350 tour date tour across, all of North America. And, I don't think we want to be U2, I think we want to have, like, the Flaming Lips keep coming up, like a band that can do what they want to do and create records that they believe in that are slightly outside and, and still have a following and still make a living. Or Billy Bragg,
Yeah.
like he's always been a great role model for that.
Sort of cult status, I guess. Pixies, perhaps.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I mean, like, I'm not against us being a majorly, like, if everybody could have our records and got them and liked them and we didn't have to sell ourselves out to do it, then I'm all for that, But it doesn't seem as likely as creating a large, serious, committed following and being a craftsman, sort of, like making a living at it and being able to do something like Billy Bragg does or Tom Waits. Or
Cool. I was going to ask you something else too. Lost my train of thought. All right, here we go. Hey, you're watching Umbrella TV, and this isn't really Umbrella TV. This is some EPK production. I'm speaking to Ron Hawkins of The Lowest of the Low. How you doing, Ron?
I'm great.
Cool. And so the reason I've caught up with you is we want to sort of talk about what is in the works for Lowest of the Low. You're probably the most interviewed person, or the person that I've interviewed most, actually, with Umbrella.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And before, like, we talked a couple of times about the reunion shows that you guys did with Lowest of the Low,
Right.
and the live record. But that sort of is now done. It's in the past. And Lowest of the Low.
Thank you. They're cheering because it's done in the past.
Lowest of the Low is actually now. It's not. I'll just wait. It's no longer a reunion. It's actually you guys are back together, I guess. You've reformed. So first, what are you guys up to these days? Give us the lowdown on the low.
We're just getting a record together, basically. We, as you said, we did those reunions shows, the reunion tour, and then the amphitheater show in Toronto, and a couple of tours out west. And we sort of felt like that was, the dipping our toe in the water, and it was great to go out and play for those audiences again. But getting into this year, and especially late into this year, we really had decided that it was time, push had come to shove, and it was time to decide what this is. Is this a permanent reunion, which is something that none of us wanted, and decided that no, there's a lot of energy and a lot of new ideas, and so yeah, we decided to kind of take a shot at it and try to capture all the stuff that was good about the early '90s for us, and we've gotten past all the stuff that was bad, or most of the stuff that was bad. We're about to launch into the shopping for a deal again, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But yeah, basically right now we're writing songs, and we were in demoing at Chemical Sound with Liam Blurton, and I've worked with him in the past on Rusty Nails records, and that was a kick.
Cool.
So,
like you just mentioned that you guys weren't really sure of a permanent reunion, and I know the last time I spoke to you, you were sort of taking it day by day, and you were so does it feel good? Like, does it feel like it did in the heyday? Like, does it feel like a real band, or?
Yeah, it feels. I mean, that's the reason we're doing it, is because it feels like a real band and it feels worth doing. It maybe doesn't feel exactly the way it felt in the heyday, which is that, as I said, a lot of the obstacles and a lot of the pitfalls that caused sort of undue tension back in the day aren't there now.
Right.
Whether it be substance abuse in the band, which was an issue back then, or whether it be naivete as regards the industry itself and what it wants and what it expects of us. And we're older and wiser and been through a lot of other stuff and a lot of touring, and
Right.
we at this point know what we want, and that's all we're really concerned about.
What is it that you want?
We just want to we want to do what we did in the early '90s, but without any of the illusions of the Canadian music industry and any of the pressures that came with just being on that treadmill of
Right.
making art as a commodity.
Right.
And I mean, we're not naive enough to think that you can completely make art and enlist a machine, whether it be some kind of record company or promoters or whatever, without there being some strings attached. But we, at this point, I think are less lulled by the idea of the brass ring or whatever.
Right.
I mean, we've been there, and it didn't suit us, so
Right.
we're making the art we want to make on our own terms.
Cool. But are you allowed that freedom? Like, I was like reading some doing research, I guess, for this, and like the chart number 6 best Canadian record of all times and stuff,
Right.
and like, and I'm sure you probably could care less, but they're like a lot of people. You have a very like rabid sort of loyal fan base, the people that really loved what you did 10 years ago or whatever. Do you
Yeah.
feel like sort of any expectations? Do you really feel like you have the complete freedom to create anything you want, or?
We like to think that. I mean, we like to think, one of our mottos was sort of like, there is no lowest to the low, let's go make lowest to the low. Basically, the king is dead, long live the king, like,
Right.
let's get on with it. And, we've been places since, and we want to bring all the things we learned making music with other people and making other records and bring all that. I mean, we can't not bring all that to the table. So, I mean, we feel very responsible and very loyal to the people who have followed us for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that poll, the Chart magazine poll of any poll, I mean, usually those things don't mean much to me, but that's a reader's poll, which, it was a fascinating and really a sort of just a really, I don't want to say ego stroke because that kind of cheapens it, but like it was very endearing to find out that the
People care enough, I guess.
yeah, and that the record had legs, like, I mean, it's something you can't know until 10 years pass or 20 years pass or whatever, but it was fabulous to know that it was a good enough record or touched enough people that people are still buying it, and
Right.
people are telling their kid brothers and kid sisters to buy it, and
Right.
their friends to buy it or download it or whatever they're going to do. But,
It's all about the download.
yes, exactly.
With like, I mean, it's been like how many years was it between your last show and the reunion? It was like 6 or more years, or
Yeah, probably, but I think probably pretty close to exactly 6 years.
right. So in that time, like everyone in the band sort of, well, for lack of a better phrase, I guess, grew up maybe, or I know people that have kids and
Yeah.
careers and stuff. Do you think it's possible to retain that vitality that you had when you were in your heyday? Now that everyone has outside interests, or is it?
Well, that's the thing. Is like I think I guess it would depend on how you define vitality. I mean, like there's the vitality of
Well-
being 21 and going, let's just get in the van and
Yeah.
go, and that's fabulous, and it's really an exciting energy to tap into. But it also is a bit of a spurious energy. Like there's energy flying off in all directions.
Yeah.
It's not
Russian
very
roulette
organized
sort of thing.
It's a Russian roulette kind of energy, and it's not very focused.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're very vital now, and I feel that part of what this new vitality is for me is the idea that we have had all these other experiences that are visible in what we're doing now, and whether it be other people we've played with or other kinds of music we've experimented with, or what we do outside. Dave's an animator, and I paint, and Dave paints, and Steve has a solo record coming out and had a band, and John had been producing and stuff like that. Like I think all of those things came in handy. Like there's all kinds of insights from that are valuable
Right.
to what we're doing now.
So
We have to be a little more focused because of things like people
Schedules
having
and stuff.
kids and
Right.
yeah. But it's really, I mean, that's kind of an exciting challenge, to not just have carte blanche, jump in the van whenever you feel like it.
Cool. So you just mentioned John, and I want to ask you this. And you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but that's a big part. Like you guys came together as 4 of you,
Yeah.
John and Steve, Dave, and yourself. And then within the past couple of months, John Arnott has left the band, and he's been replaced.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? Like
It's a relatively classic scenario. I mean, like
irreconcilable differences, I guess.
yeah.
Is this
Well,
it?
I mean, yeah, just sort of differing attitudes about what we are, or what we're going to be. Like we parted ways with our ex-manager as well, and have a new manager, Linda Woods, and that was similar. It's like, we got back together to do these reunions, but it doesn't mean that everybody's on board or on the same page as far as what it is that we want to do in the future. And it was just about that, like sort of coming to terms with where we're going, you know.
Sorry,
And
coming to terms with what?
it's just where we're going,
Right.
and where we want to try to go, or the kinds of things we want to experiment with, and
Right.
and who we are as a band now. I mean, you can never. It's exciting to never be able to take that for granted, because it keeps you on your toes. And I think part of the problem back in the day was a certain taking for granted, and you get kind of lazy and you get kind of fattened in a way by that. Like you sit on your laurels, or you can sit on your laurels and take what you've got for granted.
Right.
Which was another side of it. I think we had to go off and do other things, which I totally cherish what I did when I left the Lowest of the Low, and I'm really proud of it and everything. But it also puts things in perspective. And when you come back to do something like this, you recognize, wow, there is really something bigger than the sum of its parts when we get together to make music. So
Cool, man. So I don't know how to word this necessarily, but I guess like you have obviously a catalog, your catalog of the
Yeah.
first two records, and you got to rest from them for like 6 years, and then probably had some joy playing them again for the reunion stuff. But now, like how when people come to see Lowest of the Low, they want to hear Salesman or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
are you sick of those songs, or like does that seem so far in the past that
I
you
don't
don't even want to know, or
kind of, and I don't want to say sick of them, because I mean, it's been really wonderful to play them again, and like I said, like I'm not a very humble person, so I mean, it was kind of nice to be humbled by the fact that you hear that sound again, that I hadn't been playing with for 6 years, and go, wow, there's that sound, and it's only that sound that we can make when the four of us play together, and so. But now, like as you say, we've done these reunions again. We've got a chance to sort of get out and do that again, and it's just time to move on. I mean, it's it's no different. It's no weirder or no different than if we had have stayed together. We'd have made another record and another
Right.
record, and by now we'd have not been playing a lot of stuff off Shakespeare or Hallucigenia. We'd been playing a little handful here and there, which is what I think we intend to do. Is like always maintain some songs from those records, because it is the catalog. But the night won't be dominated by songs from Shakespeare in My Blood or Hallucigenia.
I've had the sort of pleasure, I guess, of hearing the new songs. I heard you rehearsing them the other night. Have you been like sort of putting them into the live show, or like have people been hearing the new stuff, and how have they reacted to that?
Yeah, a bit. The reaction when we do it has been really great. I mean, the best reaction you can get with new live songs is to not notice a huge drop off when you play them.
In the bar.
Yeah, in a set list with songs that people already know, and that's been the case. It's sort of been a level playing field, and that's been great. And yeah, I guess I've forgotten what the first part of that question was.
Just I guess the
Oh, are
being
we playing
sick
them?
of
Yeah,
playing them, and are you sick of them, and how does it relate to new stuff? Oops.
well, back in the
What the hell was that?
back in the day, we used to we would write songs and then put them in the next week. There would always be this sort of organic writing and putting them in, and a lot of the songs would kind of grow up on the road and in a live context. It would kind of mature in a live context, and I think that's very valuable. And I think that was a lot about, and is a lot about, who we are as a band. We're a lot about playing live, and we used to do these marathon tours. Back then, there was a year where we played like 250 shows in one year, and
Oh wow.
that's a lot of playing. So, but now I think there's been a concerted effort to say, you know what, like it'd be fabulous to put out a new record where people didn't know,
Yeah.
90% of the songs,
Right.
because the problem is, when you're playing in the country that you're from, oftentimes, it takes a year and a half to make a record or something, and some of those songs people have been hearing for a year,
Yeah.
So we wanted to kind of avoid that this time around, and take some time off and just have a record that, bang, this is all new material.
Right.
But that being said, we have played 3 or 4 songs because we can't not,
Yeah.
We have these sort of new songs kind of burning in our pocket.
Yeah. I guess so. As a writer, like you had like a number of years to sort of develop on your own terms and do your own thing, and now you've gone back into playing with this group of people. Like, have you had to make any sacrifices, or have you had to like sort of like, are there songs that perhaps that you keep for yourself and for a possible, I don't know, Rusty Nails record or solo record? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
have you sort of had to rethink your writing at all to fit Low to the Low?
Not really, because as I said, like, everyone else did stuff when in the time that the Los weren't together as well. So, and I'm not the kind of person that, like, I'm just not wired for sort of holding stuff back. Like, if I get too excited about the stuff, even now, I've been doing it for, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I still am very excited when I write a song. It's kind of like, hey, I wrote a song. Like it's
Finish
still
the
kind of
song.
cool. Yeah. So I'm very I don't know. I'm very excited about it. So I don't hold anything back, and Steve doesn't either. And we just bring this stuff in. And of course, there's always a sacrifice when you're not the sole pilot of the ship.
Right.
And Lowest to the Low is very much a totally old school band, which is like there's four pilots of the ship. Like nobody really runs the show. Everybody kind of runs the show. So yeah, so you do sacrifice, and you push and pull, and you fight, and we fight much more politely than we used to fight, which is
Right. Which is key, I
which
guess.
is great.
Yeah.
And there's no choking anymore, which
Cool.
is choking's very unconducive to getting songs arranged.
Right. I'm going to pause because I'm about to run into tape, so I'm just
Okay.
going to switch tapes.